Why is US the most powerful country in the world, Shrikant?
Because they have a large army, they have more advanced technology, they have lots of food. I don't know.
None of the above. It's because of their geography.
Geography.
Yes.
Geography.
Yes, geography of a country decides so much of their past, present, and their future. In fact, in the US, elections in Alabama are decided by the coastline 100 million years ago. Okay?
Hold on. Are you trying to tell me that having a huge army, having lots of food, having great technological advancements have nothing to do?
No, of course, that is the reason why. That is called a proximate reason. Okay.
Okay.
But why does US have that? I mean, compared to other countries, right? Why does US have the biggest army? Why does US have the most technology?
Free
Why?
trade, capitalism.
Lots of countries in the world have free trade and capitalism. Why US is way ahead of everybody else?
Oh wait, they did not get involved in the world wars until it was too late, and so they didn't suffer as many devastations as other countries in Europe.
Why didn't they get involved until too late?
Because they were quite far from where the war was taking place, which was mostly in
Now
Europe.
we are coming to geography, right?
Okay.
US is separated from the rest of the world by Atlantic on one side, Pacific on the other side. That's why the World War didn't engulf them the way it got everybody else.
Good point.
And that is why they did so well after that, right? But that's not the only aspect of geography that helped them, right? Now, geography controls so many things, right? Geography, like I said, controls why Alabama elections go a certain way, and that depends on the coastline 100 million years ago. Geography decides why the Europeans took over all of America and not the other way around when Columbus discovered it. It could have happened that Columbus discovers America and then America comes and takes over all of Europe, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And even geography determines why Brazil speaks Portuguese where the rest of the continent speaks Spanish. Let's look at these maps of Alabama. Okay. Look at the first one. Okay. The little green band you see, that's where the coast of that continent ended 100 million years ago. Okay. Because the ocean levels were different. Okay. What happens at a coast? You get sedimentary deposits.
Correct.
Okay. So now these are the sedimentary deposits. Later what happened? Okay, ocean levels went down.
The rest of the landmass became exposed and America
But
became,
much later, if you look at which part of Alabama has fertile soil, you will see the exact same band decided by a coastline 100 million years ago. Okay. Now, let's come to 1997. Okay. Let's look at Alabama and let's look at the average sizes of farms in different parts of Alabama. Do you see anything interesting in the map?
Big farms along what seems to be the same coastline as the previous 2-3 maps.
Correct. So 100 million years ago, the coastline determined farm sizes today. Okay.
Wow.
But let's go back 150 years ago. Let's look at the slave population in Alabama. Does this look familiar?
It's again the same coastline.
Why?
Because those were the biggest farms and therefore needed the most slaves to work on those farms.
Right. So now let's move forward to 2010 and let's look at the black population at Alabama. Looks familiar?
Yep. Because most of them didn't move, they decided to stay where their ancestors stayed and therefore created large swaths of population.
And now let's move to 2020 and let's look at which counties got Republican votes and which one Democratic seats.
The blue is clearly Democratic and it's still the same patch of fertile soil which was laid down 100 million years ago.
Geography is history. Geography is destiny.
Right. Okay, wait. Geography explains why a certain set of election results happened in a certain way, but it still doesn't explain how the US became a superpower.
Let's look at the advantages of the US. Okay. Let's look at the map of US. Okay. You will notice it has the largest navigable waterway in the world. The Mississippi-Missouri river system is the largest river system, and boats can go all the way up. Okay,
Yeah.
not just that, but just a little north of this rivers are the huge Great Lakes. Okay, now why does navigable rivers and waterways have such a big impact?
Oh, I remember we did something along these lines in another episode, because shipping through water, shipping is actually the cheapest form of transporting cargo.
It is 10 to 30 times cheaper than any other method, right? So in terms of trade, US has a huge advantage. Things grown in like way center of US can quickly reach the coast, and from there quickly reach Europe or anywhere in the world because of large navigable waterways, right?
Wow. Okay.
Things in the middle of Africa just can't get out. It's just impossible to get out, right? And
Okay.
so yeah,
All right. So waterways help moving stuff, but what about producing stuff in the first place?
US has the largest contiguous farmland in the world. Okay, it makes so much food, it grows so much food that it is the #1 exporter in the world, and it exports twice more than the #2 country in the world. Okay,
All right.
so India also has large plains, but it's not contiguous, they're fragmented.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also smaller country as compared to the US in terms of the breadth. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. In general,
In
US
general.
is
Yeah.
large, right? Now, China, Canada, and Russia, they are bigger countries,
Yes.
but they don't have large enough plains, and their land isn't that fertile, right? I mean, Canada is and Russia are, of course, cold, and China is like a large chunk is desert, right?
Yeah.
And another way geography helps US is that oil and gas, it is now the #1 producer.
All right. So fuel is available, food is available, transport is available. Therefore, everybody across the continent is going to be well fed.
Yeah, and not just
Hot
that,
piping food.
not just that, but the ocean currents actually help them in a way that it doesn't help others, right? So on the east coast near New York, Washington, etc., the warm Atlantic current comes and warms them up so that their ports are usable for a longer time in the year and people can live more comfortably.
Okay.
And on the west coast, California, which otherwise would have been very hot, it gets cold currents.
All right. Fascinating. So the ocean currents, the availability of waterways for transport, the availability of contiguous tracts of plain farmland for producing food, and lots of oil and natural gas. All of this contributes to lots of food being produced, which contributes to abundance and prosperity.
And of course, the oil and gas is in the last 100 years that has become one of the most important things. All prosperity depends on energy.
Hold on, we discussed these same things in that episode where we talked about India being the most populous.
Yeah.
Why is the US then the most powerful instead?
So, before 1500, okay, before Columbus landed up, the Americas didn't have cows.
Cows again?
Yes, because they didn't have cows, because they didn't have any large domesticated animal,
Yeah.
they couldn't do all that farmland. They couldn't use it effectively because everything, the tilling had to be done by humans and not bulls.
Right.
That is one problem. And of course, the north-south nature of the Americas means that any new invention of farming techniques can't move south because the climate is different, the soil is different, everything is different, right?
Yeah. And
So,
the first time I heard this north-south and east-west thing, the word that popped into my head was Vastu. Then I said, no, there is no Vastu in this context. It is something else.
I guess you could call it Vastu. In general, the east-west versus north-south makes such a big difference that also explains why white Europeans took over the Americas.
Okay, you have to explain this because
Yes.
it makes no sense whatsoever to me right now.
So first, simple, what I said earlier, right? That in an east-west continent like Asia, any farming techniques that gets invented quickly moves east and west, and it is
Yes.
applicable to the adjacent countries.
Correct.
And that's how they all quickly invented newer and newer ways of farming, newer and newer. I mean, you should see what some of our staple food used to look like 2000 years before we did all kinds of agricultural innovations. Okay, but that's why Europe was so much better at agriculture. It was so much better at feeding large armies compared to the Americas. In Americas, the inventions can't move up and down because everything is different.
Correct.
But this
at each latitude, you need a different technology to make the food survive at that latitude.
For similar reasons, another thing that happened is that any population, a tribe, which is living in a particular area, can quickly move to an adjacent east-west area and go and fight there. Go and fight there, take over and all that, right? Somebody used to living in the north, if they try to come to the south, they're at a disadvantage, right? So having wars north-south isn't as easy in the days before technology, okay? And that is why Europeans had lots and lots and lots and lots of wars, and the Americas had much fewer wars, okay? What does that do?
That causes attrition in Europe and...
No, it gives Europe lots of practice with fighting wars and knowing how to win wars, and in even simple things like what kind of manipulation can you do to get them to fight each other, right? All of those politics, Europeans had like thousands of years of practice, whereas these guys were just, not that good.
Okay.
One more thing, right? Because they have so many wars and these populations all coming and fighting with each other, do you know what else spreads?
Diseases?
Absolutely. So that is why Europeans had like all kinds of germs where, one germ at this end quickly reaches the other end and they're full of germs. And because a similar kind of mixing wasn't happening in the Americas, they didn't have as many germs. As a result, they didn't have as much immunity. Right? When the Europeans landed up in the Americas, they had much better abilities to wage war. They had much more experience with wars, and they had many more germs with which to infect those guys. Plus, they had much more food to feed. Right?
They were waging technological warfare. They were waging military warfare. They were waging biological warfare.
Yes.
Man, Europe was a warmongering continent back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, so there is a book called Guns, Germs and Steel. It's worth reading. It makes this argument. Jared Diamond. Yeah. I mean, there are some inaccuracies in there, so don't take everything he writes as the gospel truth, but big picture ideas are interesting enough that you will love reading about them.
All right. Guns, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond. We've also referenced it once before.
Yeah.
So that is how Europeans came to dominate America, and then they brought technology here.
Yeah, and the geography of South America also determines why Brazil speaks Portuguese, but we are not going to get into it. I put a link, take a look at it. This is left as an exercise to the motivated listener. Okay?
He sounds like a professor from university. Exercise for you motivated students out there. Destiny.
Right. So the thing is, geography is amazing. We just teach it in such a boring way that our kids hate it. Right? So show your kids what is amazing about geography. Right? It is important to understand how geography shapes the culture of a place, how it has shaped 10,000 years of our history. And there are many other fascinating connections between geography and what's happening in the modern world. Okay, let me give some examples.
Okay.
So, I mean, we already did an episode on why India is the most populous country in the world and how that's a result of the geography, our Himalayas and the Indian Ocean and cows, right?
He's not kidding when he says Himalayas, Indian Ocean and cows.
Yeah.
Because these three things are actually together important for India's population. They're responsible for India's population.
And how the shape of Eurasian continent and the little gap between Australia and Philippines is the cause of the locust storms that we see every once in a while. Check out the link.
That also, little gap between Philippines and Australia causes locusts in India.
Coming from Africa to India.
There we go.
Okay, so and how Chicago
Yeah.
is such a big city because during the Ice Age there was a water stream from Michigan Lake to the Mississippi River.
This is all
check
so
it out.
much reminiscent of chaos theory and the butterfly effect that I'm quite fascinated. We'll put all of these links in the description, in the show notes.
And
Do check
also
it out.
there is a area in Europe called the Blue Banana, which has unusually high GDP per capita.
The blue
And that,
banana.
well, it's the shape, right? And that also has to do with geography.
Yeah.
So check it out.
The blue banana. Check it out. We are two blue bananas, but we don't banana you at all.
I like
So
it.
it's
Sit
bad
like a
joke.
banana.
Shrikant, Naveen, Future IQ.